Nico O'Reilly has, I saw this. I did see this coming though. I do think, since last season, I saw Nico O'Reilly. Now, if I noticed that he started playing left back a lot more after the Skelly Haaland incident, and I think Pep definitely made it his mission to teach Skelly a lesson, because he was very invested in that situation. City have just signed a left back, out Nori. I know he's injured now, but they signed one. Vardiel can still play there. But he said, no, do you know what? I really want to put Nico O'Reilly there. And I don't think they took that Skelly situation well. And fair play, but at the end of the day, Skelly did nothing wrong. What I don't take well is Haaland talking to a senior in that way, telling Arteta to be humble. Like, what? Like, Arteta's like probably old enough to be his dad. Like, what kind of nonsense is this? Like, the way he was talking to him, be humble, eh? Like, that's like, regardless of how big a player Haaland is, like, this manager is a good friend of your manager. Have some respect. So why wouldn't the Arsenal players back him and, show their passion for their manager and, throw it back in City's face when we battered them? Why wouldn't we do that? So Skelly, there's no, this attitude problem narrative is nonsense. Like, Skelly's a good professional, a very good footballer, raised well. His family are very supportive of what he's doing. Yes, we are back. Minichats. So I said we're back. Clearly you can see it's just me right now. Dammy's pulled out last minute. He was out last night, so I don't know if that's got anything to do with the decision he made. But yeah, we decided that it's cool to just continue shooting today, because obviously we haven't recorded for a couple of weeks now, and yeah, I felt it was fitting to speak on recent events in football. Obviously Arsenal dropped points in their last game. So, yeah, there's definitely a bit to speak on. So, let's just get into it. Right, so Arsenal 2, Sunderland 2. Not panicked about the situation at all. I do feel it was an accident. And, when I say that, I mean, I feel like it wasn't anything to be concerned about tactically or anything to be worried about just in terms of mentality. I just think it's one of those things. We've been extremely consistent in the last couple of months, probably like pretty much since that Liverpool game. So, we're always going to drop points at some point. And, unfortunately it came in the last game. And the reason I do believe it was an accident is that, firstly, Sunderland are a good team. Like, a very good team, I'm always sort of keen to keep up with the teams up on Tyneside. Obviously, shout out to Jordan, but I used to follow Newcastle a lot. I've liked them since very young, but obviously when I started going up there, had a few birthdays there, I just really started to like Newcastle. So that was obviously a thing. And then obviously this Sunderland situation has been very intriguing, because I feel like they've started to make noise in the city, and it's more than noise right now. Like, these guys are above them in the table, and they're almost doing a Nottingham Forest last season, where they're not really budging. So yeah, and they've got really good players as well, like really good players. They've managed to draw some players that had decent profiles and were in decent situations, and they've managed to somehow get them at their club, and they're doing well. So, it's a good team. Obviously, Xhaka's there, and fair play to Xhaka. I know a lot of people are sort of upset with the way, but at the end of the day, we didn't really have the best relationship with Xhaka in terms of fans to player. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. Like, this guy was, jeered off the pitch, nearly threw the shirt at us, and sort of cheered us on to keep booing him. So You know, this guy doesn't really have the best relationship with us. Unfortunately, you know, we waited so long, and then he finally gave us one of the seasons we were expecting from him when we first signed him. And, you know, then he dipped. So it is what it is, but I'm not really too focused on that. I don't hold nothing against Xhaka. I mean, shout out to him, and I think he's done a good thing going over there and really inspiring the club. The fans really like him. Like, they really like him. It's almost like they're really grateful that he's over there with them. So, no, it was a nice moment for him, but hopefully it doesn't stop what we're doing. And at the end of the day, we replaced him with a player that we've got no regrets about, you know. Declan Rice is definitely a superior player to Granit Xhaka. So, yeah, there's nothing to really keep crying about in that situation. But yeah, like, obviously the reason I believe it was an accident is because, like I said, Sunderland are a good team and they're really inspired. You've got a couple of players over there that formerly played for us, namely Xhaka, as I've talked about, and Dan Ballard. And Ballard actually scored. And, you know, Ballard is someone that I have liked for a while, I'll be honest. I have been a fan of him since he was in the academy. And I just felt, you know, that I just think it's important for all teams when they're going for titles to always just have that British still in defence, just along the back line, you know. I used to be of the opinion that it should be at centre-back, because if you look at the past winners, they've always had a centre-back that has averaged at least 20 games a season. So, I mean, in the 90s, it goes without saying, it was mainly the league was mainly British, so I don't really need to go through that. But if I did have to, you know, you got Bruce Pallister, and then when you get to the sort of, you know, even when Arsenal were winning it, we had Adams back there. I'm sure Keown definitely averaged a lot of those numbers as well in terms of appearances. And, you know, and then we go to the 2000s, United then bring Rio Ferdinand in, a Brit. Arsenal bring Sol Campbell in, a Brit. Chelsea start winning, John Terry, a Brit. And, you know, they go on for a decade. So we go past that now, and then City, people forget the early City teams that were winning. Lescott used to play a lot of games. It was really a Lescott and Company partnership, and actually Company was quite injury prone, so Lescott would actually play a lot more than people remember. And you know, he was important to those title winning teams for sure. Like, he's you know, he might not have been the alpha that Company was, but he was he played a critical role. And so Lescott also sort of helps carry that narrative forward. And after that, I think it changed a tiny bit. I'd still say when City bought John Stones probably managed those numbers as well, but it probably changed a bit just because the quality of centre-back now had changed and a lot of teams were looking elsewhere. But when Conte won it with Chelsea, he had John Terry and Gary Cahill. No, he had Gary Cahill playing a lot, who was kind of the replacement for John Terry in that sense. And but it did change with Liverpool. When Liverpool started to really compete and then they won it. Now, people do forget Joe Gomez did play a significant part in that first title they won in the COVID season. And Gomez was sensational. They basically wrapped up the league in the first half of the season, a bit like they did last season, really. And people forget that Joe Gomez-Van Dijk partnership was sensational. But then obviously Gomez got injured and it's Matip a lot. But what people do forget is they have British fullbacks who are very important to their style of play. Very important. So overall, you could say the identity of Liverpool's back line or defence was British. Obviously, the face of the defence is a Dutch man, Van Dijk. But overall, you know, it was a British makeup, and I feel like that's always been important. But it has changed in the last couple of years. Like, I can't really see a standout British defender in any of the City defences. I know Stones is still there, but he probably doesn't play as much. Carl Walker was obviously there. And, you know, he was a big personality for them, so I'll give them that. But in terms of the centre-back Brit, I think it's less necessary. However, you know, I do think it has been a thing for a while, and when it was a thing, it's when I really wanted Ballard to sort of be the guy to make it through here. Because he's just no nonsense. Just an old school defender, you know, and I feel like nobody's talking about him starting over a Saliba or Gabriel. Like, let's be very clear on that. Like, we've got a world-class centre-back pairing, and I wouldn't change them for many others, if any. But at the end of the day, you know, he's Holding's played a significant part of some of our important seasons. A significant part. Like, when Saliba got injured in 22-23, Holding came in, and you could say that kind of is where we blew the league away. And then last season, Kivior ends up playing, you know, in games like Real Madrid and PSG in semi-finals of the Champions League. Maybe that competition requires something a bit different, so I'm not too mad at that. And Kivior did well. I rate Kivior. I think he's a good defender. But at the end of the day, I think Ballard's playing at a higher level than any of those two played at, you know, during their whole Arsenal spell in terms of consistently. Like, Ballard is, I think Sunderland are like top 6 in the league right now, top 8, top 6. Kivior would do well to play consistently, be a starter consistently in a team competing at that pace. You know, he's like Porto right now, and Holding after Arsenal, you know, the rest is kind of history. So, you know, I do stand by how I felt about that situation, but, you know, he's gone, and good luck to him. I think I'm really happy I'm proud to see what he's doing and what he's accomplishing there at Sunderland, and the fact that he's come back from some big injuries, you know, and to be playing regularly at Premier League level at a very good age too. Now he's like maybe 26, soon to be 27. It's a good moment for him, so fair play, and fair play to him for scoring. I expected him to celebrate because, you know, he didn't really play in our first team, so there's no need to really not celebrate, but you know, it is what it is. But like I said, Sunderland have a good team, and that was the case in that situation. At the end of the day, we were playing without a striker, and even though I do like Merino, even up top, it's more in a tactical sense. I think up top in the Champions League, he's for me, he would still be my first choice Champions League number 9 in certain game, in like really difficult games, because I feel like the way he sort of plugs into midfield, it gives us that fourth midfielder. And when you sort of look at his fitness levels, I think in the midfield, you know, maybe he can be a bit sluggish, but you put him up top, the guy can almost run all day. And you notice the way he presses the front and then he drops into midfield, and it gives us a 4 players centrally. It's why we were able to suffocate teams like Real Madrid last season, and, you know, a lot of these teams that he's played against. I think he offers a really good weapon there, and the fact that he's very comfortable in and around the penalty box, he can link play. But even then, you're always going to need pace around him. And when I looked at that front three against Sunderland, I just knew that it would be a bit difficult. It would be a bit tricky, because Saka's not necessarily the fastest. Obviously, he can get beyond his man with ease in terms of 1v1 threat or whatnot, but he's not the quickest. However, even his goal does come with a Merino playing him in. So ultimately, you could say that was Merino being used to his strength, and he had someone that complemented that. But then you've got Trossard also on the left. It's possibly the slowest front three we could possibly put out in terms of players that naturally play there. You know, maybe you could say if you put Eze there instead of Saka, it would probably be a bit slower. But ultimately, you know, that is arguably the slowest front three we could possibly use. And in an away game, I think that's just, you know, that's too risky. And when I say there was some accidents, so I think I do have a little theory about Gyökeres being pulled out of that guy. I think he was I don't think he's injured. I think after Burnley, he gave a sensational first half performance. Arteta liked it a lot and thought, we need to save him now. Like, he's now in form a bit. Let's save him, wrap him up. I don't want him going over to Sweden. And what you also got to remember with these politics in terms of letting players go on international duty is that it's not only about how they manage them physically and the injury risk that's involved. It's also the gossiping, like a lot of that can happen. Like Odegaard, I can't remember the last time Odegaard was, present on a day-to-day in the Norway team. He's missed a lot of international breaks now, and I think some of that could be partly because Haaland's over there, Haaland's a rival. They're the two main players over there. They're going to talk, they're going to talk about day-to-day life at their club and whatnot, and there's a lot of secrets that I'm sure they don't want to give away in terms of Arteta. And I think it'll be the same at the end of the day at Sweden. Regardless of what you think Liverpool are doing this season, Isak is a rival. He is a rival, and I think some of that talk and gossip, can be effective. You don't want to give too much away, and I think that has a part to do with it, but also we can't ignore the fact that wanting our players to stay injury-free is a significant part of it. And I think, obviously, Gyökeres was pulled out for that reason. And I think Arteta's thought, you know what, I can just about get away with it against Sunderland. And he nearly did. But he's probably thought, I can just about nick it v Sunderland, wrap Gyökeres up in cotton wool, and we're good to go for this next stretch of games we've got. But he pushed it a bit, and, we dropped points at the end of the day because of it. And yeah, we had a lot of absentees, but that's one of the reasons I think it was an accident. Also, there were a few things, decisions made. Now, a lot of people are talking about when he brought Mosquera on to close the game, and I do see where a lot of those people are coming from. I think bringing an extra defender on can be sometimes annoying, but what people don't realise is that a lot of the times we've done that, it's an adjustment because the opponent has gone to two up top as well. So we always want to have superior numbers in those situations. So when they go two up top, I think Palace did it. Palace did it when Nketiah came off the bench to partner Mateta. And, we had already made a defensive sub. Saliba went off at half-time. Mosquera came in. But then we brought Hincampie on. Even though that was a straight swap for Calafiori, later we then brought Lewis-Skelly on, and people were saying, I remember the people I was watching it with were sort of suspecting, Skelly might play in midfield. No, he actually made it a back five, and Hincampie played as a wide centre-back. You had Gabriel in the middle, and then Mosquera wide right of the back three, and then Skelly and Timber, I believe, were the wing-backs. So a lot of the time, Arteta wants to maintain that number superiority in those situations. So that's actually why the extra defender's been coming on. It's not really a case of him being scared and nervous. Obviously, that's a thing, but I do believe it's been tactical in a lot of these situations. And I do think that was the case against Sunderland in terms of they just started throwing bodies up, and it was like, okay, let's make sure that we maintain the amount of numbers that we've got. So I think that was something that happened. But at the end of the day, they scored a late goal, and it's come from an error from our team, to be honest. So, I can't really fault Arteta too much in that situation at all, really. The defence have been superb, and, that was always going to happen. It's a shame. It's almost like buses. Like, you concede one and then two come along at the same time, and it's a bit annoying, but it is what it is, At the end of the day, we still scored two over there without, a lot of attacking talent. So, yeah, it's just one of those things, man. It's just one of those things. But another thing I want to touch on as well is obviously, the way a lot of people are speaking on Hale, and I'll get to Lewis-Skelly in a bit, but Hale in general, I don't think there's anything wrong with the way Arteta's managing those players. At the minute, for me, last season, right? It was sort of a trial season for some players, in my opinion. Once the league was gone, and I think when it got to October, you could just feel we weren't going to really fight for it. To be honest, we weren't. you just know when you've got something about you this season, and you know when you're just not at it in a season. And I know a lot of people are saying we're getting results, and once we start finally clicking, then and it's the same with Liverpool. Like a lot of the time they'll say at the start of the season, Liverpool fans are obviously saying they're getting the results, but they're not playing the football yet. So when the football, but I'll say nah. Last season, what I've learned is that when it's not happening and you're not at it, it's gonna finally catch up. It's gonna finally catch up with you. Like, I don't think many teams really have it in them to just roll out of bed one day and decide, oh, we're gonna start turning up and win games and stuff. It doesn't work like that in this league, and I think that was the case for us last season. You just felt that we just weren't at it last year, and the squad felt a bit weak, uninspired, and Liverpool started running away with it. And what happened, and it ended up becoming a throwaway season for us in terms of the league. Like, we kind of were very comfortable at second, and then obviously we started looking at the Champions League more, and that was a great time for Arteta to just see what a few of these kids are about. And a lot of players that figured in that time would have been Miles Lewis-Skelly, Ethan Nwaneri, and then Butler, Odeji as well, who he maybe got a few minutes here and there, but the age he was at, it was obviously difficult to foresee much of a future for him. It was just a very emergency situation, and he probably had to do something really spectacular to even convince the club to keep him on. But Miles and Ethan were obviously the standout players that really made a name for themselves last season, and for me that was a good season for them to sort of show that we can compete at this level. We can definitely compete at this level comfortably, and we will be here for the long haul. They played a lot of games last year, and games that an 17/18-year-old should be very happy with. So this season now, we're a very serious team. There's a lot of things we've got to go for this season. The title being the main thing right now. It's difficult to bring them into this situation. That's just the honest truth. Like, Nwaneri's definitely got a lot of development to do in regards to playing that 8 position and starting in that position, for sure. Like I said, I'm watching our Hale players very closely because I'm very invested in that situation, and I know exactly where they can improve. I know exactly where the flaws are, but I know exactly where the strengths are, and I know exactly what will complement them in terms of getting the best out of them. The current setup right now isn't complementary to them, to be honest. It's just not. It doesn't adhere to their qualities as much. Obviously, we're very rock solid in defence. Lewis-Skelly does have some concentration parts that he needs to improve on, and then you can sort of argue about the disciplinary moments as well. However, I do think he's by far our most talented left back, and that's without a shadow of a doubt, and I don't worry about him at all. And someone said to me that, but if you rate Skelly so much, why do you vouch for Hincampie as much as you do? And the reason I do that is because, for me, Hincampie will be a long-term left centre-back for us, and I think he'll be Gabriel's replacement in the long term. Now, Gabriel probably has 3 or 4 years left at a very good level. He's only, I think he's soon to be 28. You could imagine him going to like 32. So he's got a few years left, but in terms of at his actual peak, at absolute peak, you need the competition, put it that way. You definitely need the competition, and I'm a big fan of Hincampie. I think he'll end up in that position, but I want him to start playing more at left back, because I think we need to rush that. We need to start speeding that process up. At the end of the day, he's on loan with I believe it's an obligation to buy. And like, I want us to make that purchase, but we definitely do have to be sure. And I think the fact that he's a very good defender, if he starts playing at left back, you'll see the transition into the left centre back position will be seamless. So if you look at City, for example, what they've done with Vardiol, played left back since he's been there, fantastic there in a couple of seasons. Last season he was maybe a bit very flawed in his defending, but attacking wise he was really good, and he showed qualities on the ball, he showed qualities technically, and obviously he can defend there as well. Now you've moved him into centre back now. You can see the guy's very complete there. He can cover the channels really well. He can almost defensively carry a young man like Nico O'Reilly over there, because he's very used to now defending the channels, having had that experience at left back. You can see he can really defend a wide range of the pitch now, and it means you can even encourage a lot of risk in how you want to defend in terms of the high line and stuff, because these players are very comfortable getting across. To a lesser extent, I think Calvin Bassey, someone, obviously him being representing Nigeria and stuff, is someone I've obviously been watching, and even at Fulham last season he was really impressive, and he's someone, since his time at Ajax he was playing a lot at left back and whatnot, and even at the start of his Fulham career, a bit of left back, and then now he's come into the centre back area. I know it's to a lesser extent, but he's come into the centre back area and it looks very solid, and I feel like that transition is a really good one that needs to be used more by coach. I think it's a nice new way of shaping your centre back now. I think it's a very difficult position to find quality, particularly at Arsenal. I don't think we've had a great record with centre backs overall, to be honest, in terms of since Wenger's actual signings. It's far and few between. Like, I could probably name 3 top class centre backs that Wenger signed, and I feel like overall we've lacked quality there for a long time. Sol Campbell, obviously, that was on a free. Kolo Toure, and he didn't come as a centre back. He got converted there, and goodness me, did that work. But he didn't come as a centre back. And then after that, I'll probably give you Koscielny, and even him, you can question a lot of moments he had where he just mentally crumbled in some very big moments for us. So great centre backs at this club has been few and far between, and I feel Arteta has definitely changed that, and he's changed that in regards to not only finding them, I know Saliba wasn't really his to claim, but coaching them too. And I trust a lot of players that can come into that back line and play well because of Arteta. I think the coaching he does and the work he does with them is very, very sensational and significant, and I think that's the reason why I'm not too panicked about this rumoured Gabriel injury that I'll get onto soon as well. But I trust Arteta in that department. So Hincampie is someone that I think can offer so much if he goes into that area. He can offer so much. I think the way he can defend channels, and when you have Skelly next to him, and I'm talking long term here, when you have Skelly next to him, Skelly can then start being a lot more adventurous and creative, and operate in the zones that he wants to operate in, because he'll have Hincampie right next to him. And I think that will be the future left side, and all of a sudden the technical level goes up with that pairing, that left-sided pairing. The quality levels go up, in my opinion, and we also maintain that defensive passion that Gabriel brings in Hincampie. Like, the guy really enjoys defending as well. So I'm kind of more on the vibe of speeding up that process and using him at left back. And I do like Calafiori. I think Calafiori's got a lot of quality, but I'm just sort of the opinion that I simply just don't think he's as good as either of those players in either position. Personally, that's just how I feel. I think he is a good player though, but I just feel those two are better in both positions, and I'd rather see them a bit more in terms of long term. But at the end of the day, Calafiori has been part of a back 5 that has maintained such a great clean sheet record up until last game. So it'll be hard to change it, but I think now is a good opportunity to maybe shake things up a bit. Obviously, we'll probably have to because of the Gabriel situation, but that definitely does present a good opportunity to do so. So, we'll see going into the next going into this coming month or these next few weeks. Obviously, we've got Tottenham, we've got Bayern Munich, and we've got Chelsea. I think all 3 games are winnable. To be honest, I think all 3 games are winnable in terms of just getting back on track and just getting our momentum back. But the Gabriel news is a bit of a blow. It's definitely a blow because the set piece quality definitely now means that we are going to have to be very a lot more dynamic in how we score goals. By force now, it's like we've always had it as an option because, like I said, the set piece narrative is a bit overblown. We're definitely a better team than that. But Gabriel does, make us significantly less of a threat from those situations, for sure. He's the best in the world in the air right now. And, to lose him is a blow. So it presents a new challenge, but I think it's one we're capable of getting out of. And yeah, we'll just see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But yes, it's a shame, because you could argue, well, Arteta's right to always pull players out of the international break, and I agree. In some regards, like my thing is just the way we go about it. Like, maybe do we have to so much act as if they got injured in one of our games and then miss the next game to then convince people of the situation that they're unavailable? Or can we just kind of put our foot down and talk to the player and let him know that we do pay your wages at the end of the day. This game is not so vital that you need to play. I get it though, it's a World Cup year and we've got a lot of players in situations where they do need to prove themselves in terms of starting for their nations. But ideally we can pull some players out a bit more because I'm mainly just concerned about Arsenal. We don't have any Nigerian players, so yeah, I'm just invested in the Arsenal situation in regards to that those instances. So yeah, man, like that's just a few things that I did want to touch on in regards to Arsenal over the past couple of weeks and what's to come. I do think in regards to who might step in for Gabriel, it does remain to be seen. If he wants to continue with this left-footed bias, then obviously Calafiori and Hincampie are 2 options there. But I do think Mosquera will feature more for sure. I think Mosquera is definitely someone that Arteta's been wanting to utilize for sure, because firstly, what people need to remember is I think Mosquera was initially brought in as a long-term Saliba replacement. Saliba hadn't signed a deal and was talking all sorts of reckless in the summer about, if we don't win the trophies and stuff, I have to consider my future. And I can't lie, it's made me even kind of fall out of, it's made me like Saliba a bit less in that regard because, I've always had a thing of the player that starts that narrative. And if you want to go back to 08 times, Arsenal just lost Henry just before that 07-08 season, and it was a rebuilding process, and we surprised everyone when we had a strong season post Henry, very strong season. Like I said in a previous episode, Adebayor out of nowhere bagged 24 league goals and 30 in all competitions. That matched Fernando Torres' numbers, but Torres got all the allure and all the praise because obviously it was a debut season. But his numbers were really good, and Fabregas really made the team his. And that midfield of Kleb, Fabregas, Flamini and Rosicky was liquid football. But then Flamini was the first to sort of leave on a free. And it's the first time that had happened to Arsenal in terms of, just a player, just, you know, kind of playing us. And I heard that, you know, some of that was to do with the fact that he didn't play in the, you know, he was a bit disgruntled about a previous situation, and I think it was the Champions League final that he missed. You know, if you remember, he played left back all the way through in the Champions League and did fantastic there. We got to the final, our first ever final in that competition. And then the final comes around and the best left back in the world takes his spot again. Now, you can't really argue with that decision from Wenger. Ashley Cole was the best left back in the world at that moment, and he's come and taken his place back in the biggest game of the club's history. Like, it made a lot of sense. But I could also see where Flamini might feel, I don't like that. That was kind of deep. I didn't really like that. You know, the way I was playing, I don't think I deserved to lose my spot. And he would be right to feel that way. Like, if you were there and you really watched how we did, like, we had a great defensive record even in that run. And, you know, guys like Senderos were playing a lot, and it was just magic, like the way we kept going. And, you know, Villarreal semi-final, get a last minute penalty, we saved that, and it was a magic run. But I could see where Flamini might have been hurt by that. But little did I know he would have been keeping track of that for the next 2 years, even when he became a regular starter in his actual position and decided to leave on a free. Because I can't imagine why it would have been footballing reasons. He was playing a lot, we were starting to compete, and he was a big part of us competing in a very young team. And, you know, I get Milan is a big club, but I don't think that move made the most sense in terms of football reasons at the time. So yeah, like, obviously he had left on a free, but, you know, I was a bit pissed off about that. And then Kleb was out of nowhere too. And Kleb's one was the one that annoys me the most, because, like I said, Flamini might have a reason. Kleb, for me, doesn't. You know, Kleb was a significant part of our football back then, especially his retention levels were incredible. And the way he could play, he was so both fitted. He could play left, right very comfortably. He would just keep the ball ticking all the time. Like, he was really good at being sort of the secondary playmaker in terms of like, he wouldn't give you great numbers even in terms of his final action, but he was very fluid, and underlying numbers is what he was really good at. And he just decided to ditch us. And, you know, first it was meant to be Inter Milan, and you know how I feel about players leaving us to join Mourinho. He really wanted that Inter Milan move. In the end, he ended up going to Barcelona. It didn't work out, and he regretted it. But since then, I feel those two were the start of them players just saying, I want to win trophies, I want to win silverware, and just leaving us. Like, that started the trend. It was those two players. Like I said, Flamini has half a reason. Kleb is someone that I've just not really, I just don't, you know, I'm just not a fan of him because of that. And, like, because, you know, I was very passionate back then and stuff, and I feel like something that I was very invested in, he kind of just took that away from us instantly, and it became another rebuild. And, you know, we then get to another situation where, okay, we're competing again and we look good. And, you know, 22-23, out of nowhere, we just have this team that, you know, looks hungry, ambitious, a lot of quality and talent, and, you know, for the long term could definitely do something. And then last season, Saliba's kind of reversed it back to the Flamini situation / Kleb situation. And I didn't like that. I think it was unnecessary. And, you know, it definitely could start something. Now, you could say he's turned it around by signing the deal, but you've already put that in place, and you've already said something, and people are now watching that situation to see, well, let's see if he does win something, and blah, blah, blah. I know he's put it in reverse. He said, I don't want to leave until I win something now. But then what happens? We win something, and then those rumours will come again. So I didn't like that. So at the end of the day, we've got to start it was right that we started making our future plans in regards to that situation. And Mosquera seems like he was planned as the long-term replacement for him. Now, obviously, him signing the deal is throwing a whole new spanner in the works. And it's changed the situation significantly, and I think it's altered Arteta's plans, because I think Arteta was happy to really start grooming Mosquera into that role this season. Like, if you notice, he would be instantly off the bench if any injury or problem occurred for them. He's the one that's chosen, when we do go to a back five, he's the one that's chosen to play in that. And I think Arteta wants Mosquera to be part of this. Whatever we go on to achieve this season, Arteta definitely wants Mosquera to have a significant role in this. So right now, this does present a very good opportunity for Mosquera to, again, have a significant part to play in whatever we go on to achieve this season. And, you know, I believe that he'll probably come in. And yeah, it does obviously go against the left-footed, right-footed balance structure we have back there. But yeah, at the end of the day, Mosquera is a very good centre-back. And he's got a fantastic opportunity. Obviously, he's been playing left centre-back for a while. Every time he has come in, it's almost been in that position quite often. So there shouldn't be too much surprise for him entering that role. But we'll see how he gets on. We'll see how he does, and hopefully he does well. But at the same time, you know, if he doesn't, and you know, we start to drop a lot of points, that's the type of thing that could break him. And you know, so it's a big moment for him. But like I said, I've got a lot of faith in Arteta's defensive coaching, where I think not too many problems will be presented in that regard. But time will tell for sure. One thing that I do think it is also a good thing for Gabriel to sit out for a while, just for a while. Obviously, you could argue he's been our player this season. It's definitely been between him and Rice. A Trossard is also a shout as well. But I didn't like his reactions in the Sunderland game. I think he got a bit too over emotional, and I didn't really see signs of leadership in that moment. And you know, like I said, it's hard to criticize that, because that's some of the things that we love about Gabriel, that the way he defends with such passion and emotion, that's why we appreciate, you know, him as a footballer, because that's a big part of his game. But at the same time, when it does go wrong, it can look bad, and I don't want that to almost be the critical image of, just like if you remember Zinchenko away at Anfield when he dropped the tears and stuff. Like, it's almost like that was a moment, you know, where you felt like the league crumbled. And you know, you don't want this Gabriel moment to be one of those. You really don't. So I felt like just a bit more self-control and just, you know, clapping the lads on, don't worry, we go again, would have been more ideal, rather than, you know, screaming and shouting and, you know, throwing your shirt up on your face and stuff. And, you know, I know they were very passionate about that clean sheet record, but there was no need to overreact like that. It is what it is. We move on. You know, we've got a title to fight for. There was no need for the theatrics. And, you know, something Gabriel did, and I think, you know, it's a good time for him just to sit out a bit and just calm down, relax, and, you know, then gather the determination to win your spot back. Because, like I say, if Mosquera performs well and we start another run of clean sheets and whatnot, you know, there's a fight on his hands. So, you know, I think there are some positives that can come out of this situation. I'm not too panicked about the injury, as long as it's not a long-term injury. For me, a couple of weeks is fine. Obviously, it's a big couple of weeks coming, but I think it's fine. So, yeah, we'll see how that situation transpires, and we'll just see how Arsenal do. But looking ahead to the North London derby, that's one I'm definitely looking forward to. You know, it's hard not to. Like, that's such a big game, and I think Tottenham do look good this season. I think, even though obviously they've dropped points here and there, I think the level of the coach is a good level, and you know, I think they've got some good players where on any given day they could really turn it up and do damage. Like, I do believe that. In terms of their threat this season in regards to competing for whatnot, I'm not too worried about them, but in a one-off game where they're up for it, they're definitely a team to be concerned about. So, that's an exciting game. Obviously, it's at home, so we've got the advantage, and the fans will be very up for that. We'll be really up for that, and yeah, I'll definitely enjoy it. And but it needs to start a run for us again, because after that we've got Bayern. I want to win that game. For me, that's not a throwaway game at all. We have to prove that in the Champions League, especially with Bayern, because we've got a history with Bayern where we're a bit haunted by them. They've battered us in many years, many situations, and eliminated us even under Arteta. So I want to win that game and look strong in that game. And that's a game where I do think Miles Lewis-Skelly would suit. These games in Europe where we're looking to have a bit more control, the game's a bit more slower pace. I think those games are good for Lewis-Skelly to play at left back. I think he should be our main Champions League left back, actually. And another thing with Skelly as well, when sort of this midfield argument, right? I get it. I do get it. And he has the quality to play there for sure. But I don't see why people are calling so much for it when they see what he does at left back anyway. Like he plays a perfect role at left back in regards to his qualities. He does it there. Now, from left back, when he does midfield things, so in terms of when he goes on his long runs, his carries, his dribbles and stuff, like a lot of that it's the way he builds momentum is the fact that it goes unmarked and unchecked to begin with. So it kind of comes out of nowhere. And then once you gather momentum, you keep going and you keep going, as we saw with the Atletico Madrid assist. Like you keep going. And I feel like the left back situation is perfect for him to really show most of his qualities, in his game. And, let's not make the same mistake we made with guys like Ainsley Maitland-Niles and stuff. And I know people say, yeah, but Skelly's probably a better midfielder than Niles would have ever been. But we don't know that at the end of the day. Like, Niles played a sensational game in midfield at Old Trafford. And this was a decent Man U team. It's not the Man U teams of late. This was like one of their better post-Fergie teams. And he was terrific there. I think it was against Mourinho's United team. So, so he potentially could have been a good midfielder. But if you've seen his career now, he's a fullback full time now. And he probably wishes that, he stuck to that back then. He probably wishes, actually, do you know what? If I was going to be a right back for my whole career, I'll probably rather have done it at Arsenal, because up until Ben White, we were struggling there. Like after Bellerin got that injury, like he could have had a saver. So, let's not do that with Skelly. Let's not force this narrative. The way he's playing at left back is perfect for him. He gathers momentum from very deep and he keeps going. And he's got the fitness levels to keep it going. He's got the quality levels to make it work and make it happen. And his carries are sensational. And what's also important is that he can defend well. The only thing is his lapses in concentration, but that will improve. But he's got very good defensive qualities. Like, even if you remember that sort of clearance against Leicester when he just nicked it back, it was very clever, very, very clever that. And that showed that this guy could definitely hang in defense. And, I think he's someone that could definitely help us not have to even throw it back to Ashley Cole anymore. I think at left back, he can be very, very special. And, too cool with Greaves, even though obviously the recent omission might suggest otherwise, but otherwise, Tuchel plays him there, and I don't think that situation's anything to worry about as well. Like, Nico O'Reilly has, I saw this, I did see this coming though. I do think, since last season, I saw Nico O'Reilly. Now, I noticed that he started playing left back a lot more after the Skelly Haaland incident. And, I think Pep definitely made it his mission to teach Skelly a lesson. Because he was very invested in that situation, City have just signed a left back, Nwaneri. I know he's injured now. but they signed one. Vardiel can still play there. But he said, no, do you know what? I really want to put Nico O'Reilly there. And I don't think they took that Skelly situation well. And fair play, but at the end of the day, Skelly did nothing wrong. What I don't take well is Haaland talking to a senior in that way, telling Arteta to be humble. Like, what? Like, Arteta's like probably old enough to be his dad. Like, what kind of nonsense is this? Like, the way he was talking to him, be humble, eh? Like, that's like, regardless of how big a player Haaland is, like, this manager is a good friend of your manager. Have some respect. So why wouldn't the Arsenal players back him and, show their passion for their manager and, throw it back in City's face when we battered them? Why wouldn't we do that? So Skelly, there's no, this attitude problem narrative is nonsense. Like, Skelly's a good professional, very good footballer, raised well. His family are very supportive of what he's doing, root for him, and this, like, these rumors they're trying to, they it seems like they want to make him the new Sterling. But if he wasn't to make the World Cup, then I don't think it would be a disaster for him at all. There's many to come, and he's definitely a better footballer than Nico O'Reilly. That's for certain, So I'm not too worried about that situation. Obviously, it will be a bit of a blow. But in terms of any rumours of him going elsewhere and all of this, it's definitely nonsense. Like, the guy just signed a new long-term deal, and at this moment in time, it's very difficult to guarantee him these minutes at the end of the day. That's the level we're at now, where, when you think of the players that couldn't get into City's team when they were seriously competing, people like Cole Palmer and that, and yeah, people might say, yeah, but he left to get the minutes, but that situation was a lot different, and I'm sure he probably, it's only his first season in the Champions League, and even that, he's not even really playing right now. I know he's injured, but I'm sure he probably wishes he made it at City instead, overall. So Skelly just keep focused, like, the Arsenal fans love him. He's very, very local, as local as they come. I think he was born in, was it Islington or whatnot? So, he's really one of our own, and I'm very comfortable or confident about those situations in regards to the Hale End kids. I think Arteta's managing them superbly. Like I said, last season was the throwaway season for these guys to just put themselves out there, put their names on the radar, and just let people know that, yeah, for the future, these guys are the guys that will take this club forward. And I say that with Lewis-Skelly, I say that with Ethan Nwaneri. And then Max Dowman is now having his season of letting people know. But obviously, again, Max Dowman, he's very young. So you're not going to see him play a major role in many significant games unless we have a mad injury crisis. But it's just a reminder, or just, sort of like an advertisement for the future and what's to come. And these guys are still very young, so... nothing, a non-story for me, one that I wouldn't really care to entertain further, because I'm very invested in these players as well. So, and I look forward to seeing what they'll do for us. Speaking on Hale, obviously Nwaneri is a player. I think it's interesting, actually. I've just watched Nigeria, and we just got eliminated, which is a big shame. And I'll touch on that a bit, like, after this, maybe just to round this Arsenal section off. But Nwaneri is like somebody that, I think should consider Nigeria. I think when you look at the England setup now, there's a lot of players of his profile in terms of left-footed, attacking midfielder-ish, 8.5 type of player. And you got Foden in front of him. Depending on where they consider Palmer to play, you've got players like him, and I think Nigeria probably would need that player that actually chooses them first as a nation, and we just need a big, like, we need a star, You know, like I know Wobie's come out and helped, and Osimhen is like our biggest superstar and stuff. But in terms of like someone that makes that decision to abandon what was their first choice nation, not because they can't get in, just because they're actually deciding to represent Niger. I think Nwaneri could make a big statement by doing that, you know. Obviously, Saka was the guy that could have done that, but Saka chose England, and, you know, he's had a very good England career as well. Obviously, he's had moments that maybe he didn't feel so English, but overall, you know, I'm sure he's happy about his decision. But Nwaneri is someone I think could really just change the course of history with a decision like that. And I think, you know, it'll be interesting to see how he goes on. But again, him also not worried about. You know, he's someone that's actually building a very good goal record for. And if now you're looking at him as a midfielder, his goal scoring record is very impressive. Like, he's someone that will end on very good numbers for a midfielder if he continues on this trajectory. And yeah, he's a different type of player. Like, when people talk about in this Odegaard role, he's someone, and that's what I mean about these two youngsters. Like, I think they're for our next cycle. I think you would have to change the style a fair bit. To be fair, I think with Zubimendi in there, Nwaneri actually might fit into this team, because I've always said I feel like he needs legs and he needs a dictator, a controller besides him. And actually, if you look at our current midfield setup, it's probably right for him, actually, in terms of profiles. But you're still asking someone to play that Odegaard role, and that's just not really what his game is. His game's a bit different, and you'd probably still have to switch the tactics and the style up a bit to fit him in. But he's definitely someone that will thrive in our next cycle. You know, so Nwaneri I'm not worried about, but this season, let's just focus on what we need to do, and then next season we can start to, you know, experiment a bit more again and bring players in. But make no mistake, these guys still have big parts to play this season. You know, Nwaneri, at this moment in time, Nwaneri's immediate backup for the 8 position. And Lewis-Skelly, with this injury now, to Gabriel, if true, well, if legit, Lewis-Skelly also is immediately called upon into the left-back situation. You'll probably see him get subbed in a lot of games now, if not starting some. So, yeah, not worried about the kids, and you know, we'll see how they go on. But yeah, any more on Arsenal? Yeah, I mean, to just sort of close off on Arsenal, man, like, let's not panic. Obviously, let's go into this this next run of games with confidence, with belief, with togetherness, and, you know, hopefully get another run going. And I think we'll be fine. But obviously, City is a problem. Historically, they've denied us 2 titles, and yeah, you know, it's something to definitely take seriously. But I still don't believe it's a City team of old, and I think we just have a better squad right now. So, you know, I believe in the boys, and whatever happens, you know. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, let me quickly touch on Nigeria, because I've just watched the game, and yeah, Nigeria won't be going into the 2026 World Cup, which is a big shame. It's a big shame, because we do have players of the caliber that should really be playing at a World Cup, to be honest. When you look at guys like Iwobi, it's probably his last opportunity. He's 29 now. By the time the next one comes around, he'll be about 34. The next one he's able to play in, he'll be about 34. It makes it very unlikely that, you know, he'll get to play a World Cup. Guys like Osimhen will be of significant age as well by that time. It's a big blow. It's a big blow. And yeah, like, it's confusing, because the manager made a lot of changes that I'm just unsure about. You know, he took like all our star players off, and I don't know if he was trying to make a point or whatnot, but these aren't the games to do that, you know. And Iwobi got subbed off, Osimhen got subbed off. I do need to check on which one of these were actual injuries or whatnot, because some of them don't make sense. Osimhen off at half time doesn't make sense. But he was taken off, Lookman was taken off, and Chukwueze was taken off. Chukwueze doesn't really deliver for Nigeria, to be fair. Hasn't really done so. So, you know, some of these are understandable, but at the end of the day, you still need quality on the pitch. Because when these games go into extra time, quality prevails. And you just saw nothing from Nigeria in that extra time period. So that's very annoying, like really, really annoying. And the only thing that can be done to make it right is that Nigeria now winning the AFCON. You know, we've got to win that now. We've got the players to do so, and that will maybe soften the blow. But it's a real shame Nigeria aren't at the World Cup. I'm wearing green and everything, and I would have liked to seen us in this World Cup. So yeah, I guess it now means on to AFCON. Got, I guess, root for England. And, you know, see how it goes. But, yeah, big shame. Improvements needed. And, yeah, but I won't be too hard on that situation. It is what it is, you know. But if we can get some more players that sort of choose Nigeria and prioritise us, because the quality we have produced is crazy. We could have had Saka, could have had Musiala, could have had Alaba back in the day. There's a lot of players we could have had, man. Like, it's mad. If you look at like the potential Nigeria team in terms of dual citizenship, it's mental. But unfortunately, it's not the case. But we do have an opportunity. Players like Nwaneri and whatnot. Let's see how it goes. But the more quality, the better, obviously. So time will tell on that one. But yeah. Yeah, I hope you appreciated this episode, even though it's not the full cast today as usual. But yeah, I just thought it was important to kind of just have a little catch up, because there's a lot of things that haven't been discussed. Obviously, since Arsenal dropped points, I haven't really spoken or anything. So I'm not ducking or hiding or nothing. It's just I was been a bit busy. But yeah, I think there's no reason to worry, and you know we'll just see how it goes. But it's on to the next few games, man. On to the next few games. Like let's get the job done, guys, and see how we go. So yeah, come on, you Gooners.